Oops, intermute. Hi, everyone. Okay, so hello. I need to switch this off. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome back. Hi, everyone. Oops. Hello. Right, guys. So today's topic. Welcome back, anyway, to my weekly session. Um, as you know, today's topic will be more of like the trending topic. Hello, guys. Hello. Happy Friday. For those who are in KL, today is the first day of MCO. And it's been quite an interesting day because I went out as well. Anyway, I guess everyone is doing fine for the first day of MCO if you're in KL. Right. So today's topic, right, is I'm going to talk about the very recent a so-called like topic where everyone is about hoo-haing about this Bill Gates divorce and everything, right? So today's topic is what am I gonna be sharing as well. Don't worry, I'm not gonna do some chart analysis or whatsoever, but let me share my screen. I'm just gonna give my idea on what we can always learn from in cases like that. And I'm not talking about technical readings, okay? So yeah, today's trending word of the week. Okay, my topic today is about the trending word of the week, the voices of the richest. Okay, I actually got really inspired by this topic, and I always feel that I always wanted to talk about it, but I just don't know where to start off about it. Okay, because whenever it comes to really like relationship readings, it's super complicated. Because relationships, people put on so much emotions to it and things like that, right? So it's very complicated whenever it comes to using metaphysics as a tool itself and to read relationship. Okay, it's never as direct as it is. All right. So let me begin by just talking about this thing. Okay, I'm not going to go deep into analysis and things like that, but I think it's really important to first understand, okay, whenever we want to evaluate a partner relationship, whenever I mean partner, intimate partners, right? um for the men, we always refer to the wealth star, which is the direct wealth and indirect wealth, which I think most of you guys here who actually study metaphysics, you would already know. Meanwhile, for a woman, we always look at the influence star, which is the direct officer and seven killing. So this already tell us that in the eyes of Chinese metaphysics, marriage and career and money is somehow very hard to separate. As you all know, the wealth star do not just represent the wife of a man, but it also represents the wealth of the man, right? Meanwhile, the influence star for a woman does not only represents the husband, but it also represents the boss. So we already can learn the fact that, all these elements somehow interlink between each other. So it's never always as simple as to read a situation as one by itself. Okay, so looking at, usually when we want to look at all these stars, right, it really represents, when we study about the quality of the wealth star for a man and the influence star of a woman, right, it really what it really tells us is about, it represents how the person itself basically perceive the marriage or treat the marriage, or what is the attitude towards this person as the owner of the chart to a certain marriage, right? Essentially, for anything that happened in our relationship, it is our chart overall that motivates us in a way to react in a certain manner. But today, this is what I'm going to be sharing about, right? Nothing is one, you read one star and equals to one outcome. Okay, so that's the reason why this is the very starting of the slide. I want to first define that first, right? And then that is why when it comes to, you know, the recent news about Bill Gates, I think it was a Monday morning when I saw this news break when Bill Gates and Melissa Gates decided to go their separate ways after 27 years of marriage, which is why actually fundamentally there is really no surprise at all, to be honest, because even if you look at a trend, which I really got this off on Facebook. If you guys have my personal Facebook, right, you guys have seen me posting this up and sharing this up that almost the richest person in the world is like all divorced. Okay, so essentially what we can tell here is really related back to Chinese metaphysics, that everything is really interconnected, number one, and essentially that every man's wealth is interconnected with its marriage. All right, that's why it's not surprising at all to actually see that all the top richest men in the world is technically divorced. All right, and the theory is actually quite simple, and this is purely my perception only, okay? Because I do get quite a lot of like messages about reading this person's chart, Bill Gates and Melissa Gates chart after the news. But to be honest, I never want to take it too seriously because we don't know what was their arrangement in their marriage in the first place, because we cannot just purely look at the chart. But if we look in general, okay, technically when a man's wealth, or in reference to Bill Gates as the inspiration, if the wealth increase, right, technically, you know, the women around him also increase, okay? And it's very important to note the fact that, okay, the wealth increase doesn't mean that, you know, he changed as a person. Maybe he does, depending on his chart. But I wouldn't want to give it a general statement. But what it purely means when your wealth increase, it means the wealth is equals to woman, right? Women increase around you. So basically, at the end of the day, it only tells us that your surrounding has more women. And I think it's also quite natural in a nature perspective. We always see that, you know, as men get richer, women will flirt to them. It's really a natural command. It's a supply and demand thing, okay? But it's also written very clearly in a BaZi chart itself, in a practical theoretical sense itself, right? However, that doesn't define that it will always lead to a divorce. Okay. At the end of the day, it really depends on overall a person's chart, the man's chart, to determine and to decide on what they're going to do with all the additional distractions, which is the wealth and the women in their life. Every chart itself, if you don't look at charts, every day master itself, they will respond very differently whenever they have that kind of wealth. Okay, not everyone will jump into the game, nor not everyone will openly jump to the game. So not everyone, basically, depending on their chart, will respond very, very differently according to their own personal nature, right? And that is the reason why, first things first, we cannot always say that all rich men at the end of the day will end up with a divorce because they got rich, because the wealth suddenly increased, da 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 da. I wouldn't put that the fact, all right? Besides, okay, divorce itself is just a term that officiates a certain ending in a marriage legally. Okay, we we would not actually know what is the true thing that is really happening in a relationship, because there are many, many, many real cases out there whereby, you know, as a man gets richer, women around increase, and they themselves after that have a different relationship with their wives, right? But they would never go on a divorce. Okay, so at the end of the day, we cannot always define a bad marriage or a good marriage through the outcome of a divorce, right? Because it is just a legality, it's just an action, right? And that is also why we always that is also a reason why I wouldn't say like every time whenever we look at a certain clash or punishment or whatsoever, it always is a divorce. I would never do that. Is because divorce is just a decision, it's an action of a certain person decision. Okay, they decide on the divorce. Okay, so it always depends on how the person's chart is, and that is how they determine what is the next action step. But of course, most of the time, as an easy way out, I think, okay, and because high rich, super ultra rich people like these guys, super high profile, is perhaps better to get a divorce. I don't know. Maybe they even have an advisor to advise them what is the best way to split your asset and to ensure that a healthy split of the asset and growth will be better for the individuals. All right, there is a reason why they end up in a divorce anyway. Okay, but that's why in a traditional party context, right, what we can learn from this scenario and this problem is that, okay, you cannot have the best of both, right? Because there's a reason why we always talk about, there's a reason why in party context, right, balance, keeping a chart, pulling the chart into a balanced state is one of the very reason why we always look at a party chart, because we always want to, it's like when your chart is ultra extreme. Okay, the purpose of us reading a chart is like to pull it back to a certain balance. And but the thing is this, yeah, if uh there's the thing, if you want a balanced chart, you can never always get one thing in a very extreme manner. Example, if you want to actually have, a very good marriage and be really happy within a relationship, you can never be super, super, super ultra rich. When I mean ultra rich, it means like freaking billionaires, which is only a few in the world, right? And not to say the top few in the world, top 10, right? It's very hard to actually have two things at the same time, because it's like it's a theory thing. If you're rich, your health, if you work too hard, focus on your wealth, your health will deteriorate, and then it will affect your relationship and stuff like that. We can never always have the best of both worlds unless we try to keep things in balance, because one aspect of your life is definitely countering the another aspect of your life. So the thing is, right, you can already see this, that you can never always have the ultimate best of both in every way. Of course, I do not know for those who are not divorced, like the remaining few guys, the three guys here that who are not divorced. I cannot ultimately say that they are not happy entirely or whatsoever, because I do not know. But most of the time, they are either lacking in some way of another. It's never always about I'm happy in this aspect and happy in the aspect. It's ultimately, it's, to be honest, um, it's quite rare to actually find a chart that can always be in balance in that aspect. That's the reason why we learn parts to understand what we are missing out and to pull in the balance in our life, right? There's a reason why it's like they are rich, they want to have this. It's quite hard. Sometimes you can't really have the best of both worlds. That's why I always say, 八字, to be honest, is very fair. The universe is very fair to all of us, right? It's just that sometimes we can't really see it if we don't understand the big picture of it. Okay, so that we can always tell, right? And then whenever it comes to, it's a very strange thing that this week I also encounter this type of questions on relationships, and it's so difficult to actually talk about relationships, because the one first thing that clients will always ask, so what if it's not compatible? Then I just break up with my girlfriend and then we don't get married, is it? Oh my God, this is really very difficult to answer. Of course, me being a very diplomatic type of person, I would say no, but it will then lead me to a fact that I will I will talk a long story about why you actually want to take a consult, checking your compatibility, yada, 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 and etc. That is why it inspires me to actually talk about compatibility. So actually in any divorce circumstance, right, when a couple divorce or whatsoever, and this is my humble point of view, right? Perhaps you have a different point of view. I always think that every chart, okay, when two person comes together, okay, they always are compatible. Doesn't mean like Bill Gates and Melinda, when they are divorced, means they are not compatible, okay? Every chart by nature, if you have a specific partner right now, right, you always have a certain compatibility, okay? There is a point whereby there's a level of compatibility somehow, somewhere. Otherwise, you won't even get together. So whenever clients come and ask me about, oh, am I compatible? To be honest, I don't really need to see the charts in order to say they are compatible or not. Because technically, unless you're being forced into a relationship, like forced marriage or whatsoever, if you willingly go and become together with a person, most of the time you are compatible in some way or another. The thing is, you just want to know in what aspect you're compatible and in what aspect you're not compatible. Most of the time, two people, whenever they come together, they are sure compatible. And it's a very common thing for me to see. It's either when the two person comes together, the compatibility comes in two very obvious way. The one way is when two persons chart is extremely similar. Okay, and I would say the reason why these two person can get together when the chart is extremely similar is because they have the same idea of what they want, or perhaps they are very similar. They like it, they are comfortable with it, because this is the way how I do things in life, and this is the thing that I want to do. No, they have the perhaps almost similar goals, and perhaps the same way of getting the goals as well. So these are one type of compatibility. Another type of compatibility is perhaps two person coming together because they have the same goals, but not so compatible perhaps because the way of how they want to achieve a certain things in life, which is determined by your structure in your 八字, is very different. But perhaps your idea, your goals in life are very similar. So they are compatible in terms of their goals and their endpoints and everything like that, but their approach may not be that compatible. So that is also another one. Another one, which is my personal favorite, is to see that two couples coming together that complement each other's chart. When I mean by complement each other's chart is when whatever this person doesn't have, another person will fill in that gap. All right, it's mostly because of elemental imbalances. You see it very common if you analyze couples chart when it's super hot and super cold. Okay, so usually this kind of chart comes together very well, okay, because they feel comfortable, they feel each other's gap in a way elementally. The reason why this is my favorite is because I pay attention to the fact that usually whenever they fit in each other's gap, they improve, their personal improvement is much more, their personal growth is much more, because a person come into your life and you got better because of that, because and vice versa, you know, you came to another people's life and that person's life got better because a new element has been introduced in that person's life, and for you as well, a new element that you require has been filled in a way. So that is my personal favorite, because ultimately, okay, it is my personal definition of what a relationship should be. Okay, there's the thing, right? That's why it's very important to understand what do you want to look for in a relationship. Some people, they just want to have the same end point, end goals, right? And if that is what you're looking for in a person, and that is what we as a consultant will be looking at as a compatibility factor. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. That's why whenever it comes to compatibility, it's very important to understand what are you looking for in terms of compatibility. Are you looking for intellectual compatibility? Are you looking for the way you do things has to be the same? Or are you looking for pure chemistry? You don't care how that person thinks, you just want that kind of passion and chemistry, because there are so many ways to actually determine whether or not this person is compatible. Like I mentioned, if it's a very similar chart, or it fits each other's chart, or the character or the structure is the same, you also can get attracted to each other. And also, if when it talks about chemistry, is when your 60 pillars is the same your 60-day pillars is the same 60-day pillar as your partner's one. So there are so many ways. Ultimately, how you want to determine or not with the person, it depends on how you want, what do you want to get out from that person, right? There's the reason why it's a very tricky subject, and it's very difficult to digest as well. And that is reason why I'm not sure even if compatibility is the right word to define two person coming together. And the thing is, every time we always ask a couple, what are you looking for in being together? They know it's very hard for, if you don't think about it, it's very hard to actually have in your mind, because to be also very honest, it's like, you know, your chart will determine who you are. And if you personally don't think about it, you naturally won't think about it or don't demand for certain requirements in a relationship. um that's why it's like, you know, it's very, that's why I do not solely encourage, like, if a person doesn't know what they want in a relationship, you cannot use 八字 as an immediate tool to decide whether or not this person is compatible with you, because it's very difficult. It's very difficult. In some way or another, you are definitely compatible, but there are places you're not compatible as well. So most of the time, okay, my advice is, right, when you want to look uh, when you want to check your compatibility, right, at this point in time, I just want to use that because I don't really know what's the best term to determine that. If you want to determine your compatibility with your partner, I think the reason of that is so that you can understand your partner well enough, and to understand what are you going to put your time on that person, right? And in the rest of your life, because we do get a lot of person coming in to check compatibility before they get married, you know. And I think as a head start, it's important to understand each other's couple's personality, and to see whether or not you can deal with that kind of personality for the rest of your life. Because definitely there are certain flaws in a partner whereby you cannot really take, okay? And it's important for you as a person, as a partner to someone else, to respect that and to also accept that side of the person. That's the reason why we want to do a compatibility check. It's not to say that, you know, are we compatible? Then if we are not, we're not going to proceed to marriage. It's not about that. It's ultimately, right, we cannot split a couple who is like 10 years together and split them apart because saying that they are not compatible. It's impossible to do that, because at the end of the day, there are emotions involved, okay? And that's why I don't 100% agree on just you putting in 八字 as a tool to decide a relationship. I think 八字 is important to understand the person itself and see whether or not you know what you're getting yourself into for the rest of your life. All right, if it's really not something that you can accept, perhaps you might want to double think about it, okay? Because many times people just don't know another people, and I see many couples, which is always a very awkward session, that they want to change them, and the woman want to change the man want to force the woman, you know, things like that. And the reason why that happens is only because they do not understand each other well enough and they do not accept their true nature of their partners. That's the reason why they want to change things, right? So that's why I feel 八字 in a way, it's important to do that for relationship. It's not really to like check, okay, are we compatible or not? Is to understand what are you compatible on and what are you not compatible on. And that is what I think is more effective when we want to use 八字 to see a certain relationship. Because in a way or another, you are with that person for a certain reason. And definitely there's something to learn out from it, okay? And in a way, you yourself, you have a personal chart which attracts someone who in a way similar in some way or another like you. Okay, so definitely there's always a magnetism whenever it comes to couple. Okay, so so that's what I think about compatibility in 八字. Maybe some of you guys might not agree, but I think this is a more effective way to use a 八字, okay? And the thing is, right, you might wonder why if someone is compatible in a certain way, and if even they understand what are they compatible and they understand each other very well, okay, why does still two people go their separate ways after many years, okay? And I personally feel, I haven't looked at both. I look at Bill Gates charts, but I never look at Melinda's chart, okay, Melissa chart, okay, Melissa Gates chart. I didn't look at her chart. I was just only looking at Bill Gates charts, and I started to see a lot of trend of divorces happen in that kind of pattern. Of course, people might start to say that, oh, because he's going through a punishment year, the Cho produces a bullying punishment, because as you know, Bill Gates chart only has a dog and a goat in his chart, so it forms a full bullying punishment. That's why he divorced this year, and the sin metal is attacking him, blah blah blah, and stuff like that. I personally wouldn't like to make that kind of conclusion, because when it comes to relationship, it's really, you need to really talk to that person, unless you can talk to Bill Gates, right? But I wouldn't give that kind of conclusion as it is, because no matter what, right, whenever two persons split, there's usually because of timing, okay? And when I mean by usually, the reason why a long time assuming compatible charts, very nice charts, diverge, go separate paths together, mainly is when the two persons chart no longer paint a fitting picture, okay? And is because of the timing, okay? We all go through a different luck pillars, different 10 years luck pillars all the time. And with that, whenever two different charts, they go through different paths, okay? When they start to enter different path of their luck pillar, they might go in a very different, separate phases of their life, all right? And that is very common to see in many long-term, stable partnerships, marriages, when I mean partnerships here, that they go separate ways, right? It's partly because they have a different focus that they want to deal with life, or if not, one of them actually go into a different phase, or perhaps one go to a better phase and one go to a not so great phase. Okay, that's the reason why they diverge. But that doesn't define that they are not compatible, nor they did not have a very good marriage. We cannot determine that at the end of the day, every marriage that ends is equals to because they have very bad relationships. We cannot always say that, because at the end of the day, the luck pillar does make a person change in terms of priorities and in terms of what we want in life and our focus. And like I said in the very beginning, the divorce itself is just a action. Yeah, it's a so-called decision made by two person to go separate ways. Okay. my connection got cut. Okay. My connection got cut. All right. So, okay, I think I'm still sharing or what? Okay. So, where was I? My whole Zoom actually crashed. Right. So, oh my God, I didn't notice the comment. Anyway, um, I was talking about two-person diverging. Okay. So, like I say, it's always about the timing. But I would also say that it is not always during a certain time that people decide to go their separate ways, right? So in a lot of cases where people actually stay in a very, very long-term relationship and they suddenly break off, most of the time is triggered by a change in luck pillars, most of the time. But it's not applicable for everyone. Reason why I also would say that is because it depends on the culture. It also depends on what they think about divorces and things like that. Of course, whenever if a couple are in a very toxic relationship, right? And we can see that for the past 10 years, this woman who is in a very toxic relationship could not come out from the relationship despite being abused for 10 years, which I've really seen before. But the moment she changed her luck pillar, she actually had the courage to just leave the toxic relationship. And we can see there's a lot of influences coming from the luck pillar, right? But with that being said, I wouldn't always also put timing as a reason why a relationship could change in a bad way, going two separate ways. Because my theory and philosophy in couples breaking up or couples divorcing and things like that is not a thing that happens in a day or in a year. That's the reason why I don't like to always say that, oh, whenever there's a clash or whenever there's a punishment, means like, you're going to divorce, you're going to break up, you know? No, I wouldn't always put the fact, because even when it comes to problems, relationship problems, it doesn't happen in a day. Okay, I would use the clash timing or the change in luck pillar timing or the punishment timing is more of a ticking time bomb. Okay, so when I mean by ticking time bomb, it means like, that is the period whereby you perhaps are going to have the worst emotions ever or the worst timing in terms of relationship. But how you respond to it is basically based on your chart, number one. Number two, and how severe the bomb is going to be, okay, depends on how much you actually accumulate from maybe 6 years ago. Because you know why? Almost every 6 years, a person will go through a clash. Okay, and it will hit your spouse palace no matter what. So we cannot say every 6 years you will divorce, right? Or you break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, right? It's not always the case. We always just say that, okay, when you're going through a clash in terms of relationship and everything like that, that perhaps means that there is a certain problem, challenging times in your relationship. But the outcome of it, okay, doesn't always lead to breaking up. And what is the factor that would lead to the outcome? From my humble opinion, it's most of the time is because an accumulated problem that was not solved. Okay, I've seen that many times this year because it's still a graveyard year. Something has to come to an end. And also last year was peach blossom year, when peach blossom means third party issues problem. Okay, so it happens quite often in a specific flavor of the year, and you can see that these things doesn't happen just overnight. It's most of the time an accumulation of, most of the time when we see a couple having this problem, the couple themselves would already know that they already had this problem long time ago, and it's only at a certain years it will just bomb, and at certain years is the clash year. Okay, so if you yourself can manage the relationship at a very early stage, you know, and that really depends on the chart, to be honest. In a way, managing your relationships very well, solving the problems, be more open to talk about relationships with your spouse and things like that. Coming to a clash and everything, it could just mean a bit of challenges in relationship, but it doesn't always mean breaking up, okay, or having another person in your life, okay. So it really depends on what you have done for the past 6 years and the 10 years or whatsoever, okay. So we cannot always give one factor to equate to a certain conclusion, okay. That's why the subject itself is so complicated and dynamic, and especially when it comes to relationship, which is another very, very, very complicated subject. In fact, it's even more complicated than wealth, okay. Because this relationship thing covers emotions, right? So it's very, very complicated, okay. So but the thing is, right, the timing itself, whenever clash and stuff like that, it's only telling us that this is just part of nature. And that is also a reason why, as the timing comes, people come and go and everything like that. It's only telling us that this is just part of nature. Things comes and go. Same goes to relationships, right? So we cannot always say that, okay, conclude this person divorced because he's rich, this person's divorced because he's not compatible, this person divorce is because of this person coming into the life, right? There are many, many, many factors, and I'm very sure that there's not always only one factor involved. It's a combination of few different factors, okay? So at the end of the day, right, whenever it comes to conclusion, okay, in relationships, it's so hard to actually talk about. Um, the moral of the story is like, BaZi compatibility is not the sole and by all means only thing you want to use to decide on your marriage or a certain relationship. Many people, before they get married, they always do a consult, which I think that, okay, what's the reason? All right. So it's first need to understand that you want to know the person's personality and not want to know whether or not you guys are compatible. Maybe you want to know in what sense you guys are compatible with and what is not compatible with, you know. You want to understand that. Basically, you just want to understand each other, okay? So, and it's also important to know that whenever it comes to relationships, right? Um, every relationships will go through a period of downtime. It's just like the 12 phases in BaZi, okay? When anything sets, that thing will then shine, rise again, okay? It's part of nature. That's why there's no such thing as a smooth sailing relationship, okay? And I think many people has been talking behind like Bill Gates chart and things like that. People already start talking about it, but I think it's a bit very complicated to actually do a relationship analysis if we don't know what's really going on inside the couple's life, right? And my personal point of view, that every good relationship has to reflect on a personal growth. And I think this perhaps is also something that you want to think, because many times people feel stuck in a relationship is because that they don't grow in the relationship. And this is when I define when two persons coming together, they help each other to grow. And that is what I say. In theory as well, I would conclude a better relationship between two persons. Because if two person, it's at the end of the day, right? Even though two person come into each other's life, you are still two different individuals that are pursuing your own dreams. Okay, you cannot like just let go of your life and follow the other person, vice versa. Okay, you yourself are still your own. You have to focus on your own personal growth as well. Many times I see, especially when it comes to females, they will forego their own personal life, like, wouldn't say personal life, personal growth, okay? And it's, I don't know, I used to see a lot of this kind of women. I would say it's lesser now, but many women actually change themselves in order to fit into their man's life. And if that really happened, I would say that it's not a very healthy relationship, because healthy relationship comes from two persons that help two individuals to grow together. And that is what I would consider a nice compatible chart. but I don't really think compatible is the right term. BaZi chart is a description of cause and effect, is your inner world and how you choose to interact with your partner. Yes, this is also one of the moral of the story, is that no matter whatever you do in a relationship, the outcome of it, to be honest, is because of what you react, how you react, what kind of decisions you make at the end of the day. Because it's a chicken and egg story, right? It's like a certain problem comes, relationship problem comes, and it is your chart, your innate character, your personality, who is the one who is going to respond in a certain way because your chart is like that. Of course, I don't like to put everything on the chart, but it does play a role on how you actually make certain decisions, okay? So you have to also understand, many times a certain decision of a partnership, how it doesn't turn out well, you have to definitely put yourself into the picture, and the fact that you do play a certain role in what had actually happened as well. Same goes like Bill Gates and his wife, ex-wife, story as well. They both, I believe, in a certain way, right? Make certain decisions based on their personality as well. And definitely they have a reason on why they actually choose to do it now, not back then. From what I can see is because their kids are already all grown up, and perhaps this is the best time for them to go their separate ways and chase their own personal passion. Okay, so I think definitely, all right, your chart itself will answer why you actually make such decision. And just so you know, Bill Gates actually just moved to a new luck pillar last year. So I'm not surprised if there are certain changes in what he wants and priorities in life. Also, the term of a success marriage is very personal, right? I actually read this article, which I think it's very true, saying that at the end of the day, of course, in a BaZi chart, we can always determine whether or not this person is a good husband or a good wife, depending on how he actually treats the wife and things like that, right? But also, like I said in the very beginning, right, if you have a divorce or your marriage at a very old age go separate ways, it doesn't define that you do not have a successful marriage, right? Because the word marriage itself is not in a BaZi, you know, the word divorce itself is not in the chart. At the end, it's a very goal-oriented term, I would say, because I believe like Bill Gates and the family itself, they in a way have already achieved quite a successful marriage because perhaps they have raised wonderful kids, and they themselves has good families among themselves, right? So perhaps that is their definition of a successful marriage. So it's a very tricky thing because these days we always use modern terminology to put it in a traditional chart. So I would personally think that, you know, he is quite okay with his marriage, right? It's just perhaps at an older age, he wants to chase other passion. His priority has changed because his luck pillar has changed, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have a good marriage, right? So as a conclusion, right, the term of a successful marriage is very personal, especially if you want to look at your own chart or you want to look at other people's chart. My advice is perhaps you cannot just make a definitive conclusion. You have to understand what does it mean in a person's life on successful marriage is, and a happy life means, a relationship means. Have to understand that. Like I always say, I think in my previous videos, right, words are just words, right? It is defined in a certain way, but what we always forget is that we always put current modern words and put it in the old traditional chart. But the fact that, right, we all have a very different meaning on what the modern word actually define, and that is when interpretations can go wrong, understanding can go really wrong. Okay, so yeah, so that is as a nutshell. Complication, the relationship reading is headache. Okay. I personally don't really say it's my favorite to do relationship reading, because sometimes in a way you got to be very practical, but in a way relationship has to be emotional because it involves human emotions, right? So my take is always about trying to achieve the balance. Okay, you need to put a little bit of practicality whenever it comes to relationship, meaning you have to understand what you really want in a relationship in order for you to be happy in one. Okay, otherwise you if you don't even know what you're looking for, you probably don't even know what's going on, that kind. So I would say it's better to put in a practical approach in a relationship plus an emotional approach as well. I hope you guys really can really understand what I'm trying to deliver here today, because it's really a very complicated subject. And bottom line is, okay, find out, what you really want to look for in a relationship. And if you're really trying to analyze Bill Gates' chart and why he divorced and stuff, okay, my take is don't read it as because of the bullying punishment. Okay, I believe there are more than just than that, right? So yeah, so this week my topic of sharing is about that. I got really inspired about this, and I don't know why suddenly like 2 clients also start asking me about relationships. So I guess it's the theme of the week. Anyway, guys, this shall be the end of my session for today. I hope that I brought up some provoking questions that you perhaps want to think about, and not make a conclusion about a relationship by just reading one element and reading one sort of interactions in your chart. Okay. So yeah, so for those in KL and Selangor, have a nice PKP week. Same goes to me, okay? Thank you guys again for watching. And if you really like this, feel free to share it out. And yeah, feel free to like this and share this post out. And I'll be back again next week with a little bit more sharing about depends on what inspires me. All right. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.